Welcome to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast, the highly rated digital marketing podcast that provides weekly digital marketing tips and strategies from some of the world's top digital marketers and e-commerce entrepreneurs that will help you take your digital marketing to the next level. Sit back and enjoy this power-packed episode hosted by Arlen Robinson, who is an e-commerce entrepreneur and digital marketing expert with over 20 years of experience. Hey, e-commerce marketing podcast listener. Are you looking to increase traffic and sales to your website? You can do this by launching your own affiliate program. Just visit getosi.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's getosi.com. Now get ready to hear from your e-commerce marketing expert of the week as they drill down to give you details on marketing strategies that can help grow your business.
Welcome back to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast, everyone. I am your host, Arlen Robinson, and today we have a very special guest, Jared Mitchell, who is the co-founder of SkinCareByAlana, which is one of the largest online retailers of organic and all-natural skincare products. He started the company with his wife and is responsible for over $30 million in product sales. Jared is also the e-commerce consultant for the notorious Neil Patel and founder of BeefySites, which is focused on helping e-commerce founders scale up their businesses. Welcome to the podcast, Jared.
Thanks so much, Arlen. Great to be here, man.
Yes, likewise. I'm glad to be here with you, and I'm glad to be talking to you. And thank you for joining us today. I'm super excited. In your intro, you mentioned you worked as a consultant for the notorious Neil Patel. Is the notorious meaning that is that a good thing or a bad thing? I know Neil, and he actually has been on the podcast as well. And I guess you want to say the notorious because he is, I guess you could say, one of the digital marketing gods, I guess, probably.
Yeah, he's so funny too. I consider him a friend. And what I would say is, you hear about these guys like Neil, and you think, oh, he seems really nice on the outside, but I bet if you're working for him or his friend, he'd probably be like different, right?
Right.
But the honest truth is he's like even cooler
Okay.
to have as like a friend or to work for. He's like very awesome and understanding and like probably the only legit genius, real genius that I've met in my entire life. He's
really
amazing.
Wow. Okay, that speaks volumes to Neil for sure. Yeah, I got the impression from talking to him briefly on the podcast when he was on, as well as listening to all of the things that he puts out, his daily podcast with Eric Sue, the Marketing School podcast. Definitely got the feel that he is super down to earth, very kind of chilled, laid back, and super smart. Definitely a genius level.
Yeah, he's got a really good sense of humor. And my business name is called BeefySites because my nickname is Beefy, and I'm a big guy. Now, Neil and Eric, they're small guys. And one time Neil thought it'd be funny, before I used to do anything like this, to come up and feature me on some of his videos, which I've never done anything like that in my life. So I go up there, and he just thought it was hilarious to put me out there and watch me fumble around, reading a teleprompter next to Eric, who's half my size.
Okay. I'm sure that was pretty funny. I was wondering. I was wondering how you got the name of BeefySites, where that beefy came from. So that's a nickname of yours. I got you.
I just tell everyone that I'm their bodyguards.
Gotcha. Good stuff, man. Well, before we get into it today, we're gonna be talking about how an e-commerce business can go from being a small business size to scaling their business to the tens of millions of dollars in revenue, which is something that you did. So you've got pure I guess you could say lessons from the trenches to how you do that. And so that's why I thought it'd be great to have you on, because it's often you really get the most out of hearing testimonials and people that have actual experience doing these things, and you're definitely one. So super excited to get into that. But before we do get into that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you actually did get into what you're currently doing today?
Absolutely. Yeah, I just realized we ran some numbers, and it's over 50 million at some point, and that doesn't include Amazon. So now that I've rerun the figures, there's been a lot more volume than I realized, which is an honor to be a part of. And what I would say is most of us have a similar story to mine. Humble beginnings. I did not come from a wealthy family. Everything I've ever built is bootstrapped. I've never been able to like have the rich investor uncle or VC capital group, and I just don't even know how that works. So my wife and I used to be a professional musician, paid to play music in a band on Interscope Records. And we were signed and touring and creating records, and the iPod came out. And I'll never forget the first time we went up to Interscope Records, up to the top floor. You got, some bigwigs up there. And one of them in particular, who was in charge of our band, said, "Hey guys, the iPod has taken off. CD sales have plummeted. I'm actually not going to be able to do A&R for you anymore. I'm going to go start a headphones company with Dr. Dre."
Wow.
And that's when they started Beats Audio, and that was kind of the end of my music career. My wife Elena was an esthetician, and she rented her own spa room and sold some products on the shelves. This is kind of before e-commerce, and I said, "Hey, what if I figure out how to build a website and start trying to sell some of these online?" She says, "You don't got anything else going. Why don't you do that?" So I thought about it, and I went down to Costco after I was surfing one day, and they used to have flyers on the side, like, or they still do, like air conditioning, Disneyland, like whatever. One of them was how to build a website. So I grabbed it, and I went home, and I just, for like a week straight, I took some surfing breaks, but I just like taught myself and just stuck through it, and didn't know how called them. But someone told me Google was a popular website. And so I fired up ads, and they were so expensive at 5 cents a click. Oh my gosh. But I started selling products right away. And I looked at my wife, I said, "Hey, if we can figure out how to build a shopping cart, and if we can figure out how to find more product lines to sell like this online, I think we can actually create a business out of this."
That's awesome. Awesome. What a testimonial. I think, like you said, there's so many people that have humble beginnings. They're just kind of bootstrapped, myself included, with our OSI affiliate software, our main company, OmniStar Interactive. And you figure it out, you get in there, and you try to make it happen. And so it's awesome to hear that you just kind of dove in there when your band was forced to kind of disband, I guess you could say. And you had to figure it out. So definitely good story. Great to hear your successes and where you've come from. But today we're really going to be talking about how can the average small e-commerce business really scale to that level, because that's what really everyone wants to do. How do you scale the business from small, maybe making a couple $100,000 per year to tens of millions of dollars? And so we want to start out with is, what are some things that a business really has to have in place to be able to scale to that level? Because I'm always an advocate of you got to have that foundation set before you're able to really grow effectively and then be able to sustain that growth. So what are some things that really have to be in place that you've seen?
So the first two things I want to talk about then are removing the ceiling and basically creating a real business or a real brand. And I'm going to explain, but before I do, I have to clarify, when I answer these questions, it's coming from a little bit different perspective. My specialty is taking businesses that are currently selling products online and blowing them up to $20 or $30 million a year, and then passing them on to the next guy. That's my sweet spot. Okay. One thing that makes me unique in answering these questions is I have experience on the retail side, 17 plus years with SkinCareByAlana. We do also own a skincare brand that is rapidly scaling for the last 5 years. I have experience consulting through Neil and my own businesses, and I also own a software company. So I have experience on the agency software, like tons of different sides of the coin. I'd like to say I've seen it all, but I feel like I learn something new every day. So if you own a business, let's talk about removing the ceiling. Okay. So first of all, if you want to scale to tens of millions in revenue today, which is post-COVID, hopefully, world, does that mean that you go out and like franchise and start a bunch of brick and mortar chains? Like right now, probably not. Right. So let's make sure we position our business plan, our vision, our mission, vision, values, so that it is scalable to that point. And that's why we're all here. Most of you that are listening are online, and most of you are, selling products online or services. And if you're not, you need to be. And the next thing that sort of speaks into that after we remove the ceiling is creating a real business and a real brand. Raise your hand while you're listening in your car, wherever you guys are, if you own a business and you really have like one awesome way of getting sales, like Facebook or Instagram ads or Amazon, or I don't know, like email marketing. Like most of you who are starting out, who are generating some sales, have one thing that you're really good at, right?
Yeah.
Like I was the same way with like Google ads starting out like 17 years ago. And, I don't even dabble in them anymore, but I don't even think I was that good. It was just that no one was doing it. But part of actually building a real business and a real brand is not being a one-trick pony. So how many of you that are listening got crushed recently with a little something known as the iOS update? So, right? So many people were just so heavily reliant on Facebook and Instagram ads, and they were one-trick ponies. And I started getting phone calls and emails and like, hey, what do I do? So what I would encourage you to do if you actually want to scale your business is actually create more sales channels that are generating revenue instead of just being a one-trick pony. Now, the one-trick pony thing also applies to other facets of your business. For example, does China or some supplier overseas own your business in the sense that do you only have one source of the actual products you're selling? If so, you need to diversify that as well. So we've talked about different sales channels, sources of product. Now let's also talk about your brand and building an actual real brand. Like, do you actually have a real brand story, or have you hired a marketing firm to make something up? If you're going to scale to tens of millions of dollars, you really need to think about doing these things right, diversifying and building a real story.
Yeah, definitely. The story part of it is huge. I've talked to other people that have been on the podcast, and we've talked about story building, the right messaging. I think we're really at a stage in the world these days where there's so many more people that are educated. We have so many more educated consumers, I think it is where we're at. And so, and specifically, let's say we're talking about the millennial generation. These days, that's really, and it's amazing to me because I've talked to people, several millennials when they're talking about purchasing and they're talking about certain brands, and they want to know really what's the story about that brand. Who are the founders? What causes are they behind? Where do they source their products? Are they environmentally responsible when it comes to getting certain materials? All of that is a big deal for, not only millennials, but for a lot of people these days. And so if your story doesn't include that and people can't easily find out about, who you are, why you created the company, why you're selling your products, and, the whole scope of things, you're just going to look like just the average company, and the people are going to gloss over it and move on to the next one. So it's the story piece is really huge. You also mentioned as far as the diversification is concerned, not being just a one-trick pony, because especially in these days, in this whole age of COVID, where things are really unstable. You mentioned getting different sourcing your products from different countries, different locations, because you never know. let's say there's a spike in COVID in certain places of China, that slows down the whole supply chain where you're getting your products from. So maybe you can think of sourcing it from other countries, other locations. Also, just because you're doing well with email marketing right now doesn't mean that it's always going to be that case. These days more and more people are, of course, tied to their text messaging, and so maybe you haven't even tried that, but that's another channel that you can do it. So yeah, I think it's very key that you diversify early on at the beginning, and like I said, at that kind of foundation level, to prepare for your growth and be able to kind of weather all of these changes that we're all a part of. Now, next thing I wanted to kind of get into, when you're thinking of growth, because obviously, when you're talking about a small business growing to tens of millions of dollars, obviously, when you grow, you're going to need employees, you're going to need staff to help you sustain that growth, to be able to service all of these customers. So when you're thinking of growth, what really should a small business staff or employee base look like, at that tens of millions of dollar revenue? I know it can vary depending on the type of business, and there's a lot of variables there, but what should be keeping in mind when you're thinking about employees and staffing? What really should you have in place?
Yeah, it's my wife and I, we run the businesses together, and we joke that HR is like the bane of our existence. And
okay.
I think if you have enough employees, or have any employees, you probably can identify with what I'm talking about. And the difficulty in answering the question, Arlen, is just that if you have a brand, you're probably making better margins than if you have like a retail store, and so you can afford a different type of structure and staff. And so generally we use the Google machine quite a bit when we're trying to answer this question for individual companies that vary in different verticals. But what we encourage you to do is what we've done. You can see our company org chart here that I have hung on the wall in every single floor of our facility, so that all the employees can understand what the hierarchy is, what their title is, who they answer to, and everyone that works at the company and what they do, to help eliminate confusion. We built that from the ground up, but most commonly what I see is e-commerce entrepreneurs that need to hire an assistant first to do all their busy work, like a really good admin. And then we build out the team from there, and it usually involves replacing agencies with internal employees. Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense. But yeah, that assistant role is very key, because that founder, that business owner, you got to offload a lot of that busy stuff immediately before you can kind of get your head above water, really. I think that's where you want to start at. But then, the agency replacement is also the next step, which was the marketing agency, accounting agency, things like that. Those things you would look at individual employees to replace that, and to be all kind of under your umbrella of companies. So that definitely makes a lot of sense. Now, I know every story is really different. Every company's trajectory is going to be, who knows? Some businesses can follow these, methods, can go across all of these different channels, grow their business, and it could take them, a couple of years. I've even talked to people that had them on the podcast that have had explosive growth in just 1 or 2 years and have reached these tens of millions of dollars in revenue. And, you may be able to echo that same story as well. But, is there really generally a particular timetable to make the goal happen that a business should actually strive for, so that they're not necessarily just kind of spinning their wheels? Is there a target date where you should say, okay, we need to be at our tens of millions of dollars of sales at this point? What do you think?
Well, I think this goes in a little bit to the last question. So I'm glad you asked it in this order. But first, what I'd like to say is everyone just take a deep breath and relax, because I know all of you are seeing these ads on your Instagram and Facebook that show like a really buff dude with like half naked girl in the Lamborghini saying they scaled from 0 to 10 billion in 3 minutes, right?
Right. Yep.
So like, sure, that sort of story, not 3 billion, but you know what I mean? Like the get rich quick scheme story, some people get lucky. I've never been that guy, and most of my buddies who are successful in the space, they aren't really that guy either, And so I just want everyone to take a deep breath and be like, work at your own speed, okay? Let's not give into these get rich quick schemes. Let's build a real business and let's do this the right way. It's okay if you're not growing as much as these guys that are advertising on Facebook and Instagram and as quickly, okay? So in general, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably good at marketing and selling products online. You might not be as good on the operational or finance end of things. And just like Arlen said, you might have hired an external accountant or agency to help you in that facet. But after you hire your admin, I would like to suggest to you that your next most important hire is going to be operational financial, because what they're going to do for you is back into your numbers, clarify your inventory, and help you create a reasonable forecast based on both your margins, your revenue, and also your advertising statistics and ability to scale. It's all calculable, okay? And we have all of our finances and forecasts lay out for our own business accordingly. Now, do we always follow it to a T? No, but at least it can give you a good idea of what an appropriate way to scale your specific type of business will be.
Yeah, definitely. Great advice. And it's, like I said, I really agree with you. There's the majority of the people that I know, the circles that I'm in, I don't know too many guys that have been able to get that Lamborghini in a year or two. And if you know anybody like that, let me know. But I know they're out there, but those stories are few and far between. There are people that can do that, and hats off to them, kudos to them. That's awesome. They've been able to have that explosive growth in just a couple of years, but that's not typical. And so I think the problem where a lot of people get fall in the trap and, start getting down on themselves and down on their business because they haven't hit those levels, just like those people in those ads. And, it's not to say that they're doing anything wrong, but they don't know the full story also. Those guys that have got that money, we don't really see the whole thing, the connections that they've had. And, there's a lot more to it usually than them just waking up overnight and then, swimming or drowning in an amount of cash. That doesn't usually occur that easily.
Right. I mean, those ads, they're entertaining. People want and like to be entertained. And so if you're listening to this and you kind of are feeling FOMO, just do that mental check, do that self-check. Make sure you're in it for the right reasons. Because if you're not, and you're really just looking to reach that get rich quick scheme thing, you might end up burning out. You might be in the wrong business.
Yeah, definitely for sure. Well, as we get ready to wrap things up, as I alluded to earlier, I'm a huge advocate to, getting actionable, lessons learned from companies that have done this. And I know your company, of course, is a testimonial to having this growth. But if you don't mind, if you can share some companies, either the things that you've done directly yourself for your business, the skincare line, or for some other business that have been able to implement certain things to have this growth, the tens of millions of dollars of revenue, and what are some specific things that they did to make it happen?
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'll first answer for my business. And this answer kind of applies. This is kind of what I do for most of the companies that come to me. But yeah, I can give some examples. So in general, like I said earlier, people will come in and they're good at one thing. And, it'll be like either Amazon or paid, either on social or Google or something like that. And so I tend to help them build out like 20 plus sales channels or sources of revenue. Some will get big, some will get as big as their original source, some will get bigger, some will hang small, some will cut eventually. But they're all written up here on my board and I stare at them every day. And it's things such as organic SEO. It's things such as text marketing, email acquisition, different types. Some people aren't on Amazon, so I got to convince them to get on Amazon. Half the world purchases on Amazon. Setting up actual phone sales, Facebook groups. There's all sorts of ways that you can create awareness, acquire customers, leads, and sales that you probably aren't doing right now. Now, I'm not telling you to do them all at once. I'm saying let's pick the next 2 or 3 that make sense for your business, so that if the next iOS update shutdown hits you, you're going to be totally okay and not, losing sleep every night. So when I started my skincare brand, I had already done all of that on my retail businesses and had all those sales channels built out. And it's been the best thing ever, because I started out the skincare brand on all of these different sales channels. I see. So it's like super, solid and real, because one, like Facebook and Instagram ads, we had to completely turn off. They just became a non-reality. But our YouTube campaigns are still doing awesome. We still have solid sales from email marketing and so on and so forth. So for us, my own experience, my own brands, my own businesses, that's been key. I've consulted hundreds of e-commerce brands over the years. And I'd say one of the biggest success stories that I've been a part of recently is how much Neil Patel agency has grown. I'm no longer involved because they just blew up. But many of you are running a business, and there's a lot of people that might be listening that are like an influencer, right? Whether you like it or not. Like, you're an influencer. Like, my wife's an influencer, and you can make jokes about them all you want, but if you think about what Neil did, he was a massive influencer before influencers were influencers. And he started businesses and this and that. But one way that he grew his agency was by sticking his head on like every single thing in ad. If you followed him and seen it, right? So, if you're listening and you have a following, I'd like you to consider leveraging yourself a little bit more to help grow whatever business it is that you are running. Or if you have not done that yet, you need to start doing it, because people absolutely love to be helped, not sold. And you already have a connection with this audience, and it's a great way to scale a business. Neil's agency, I'm probably not allowed to say how much revenue it's doing right now, but it is definitely in the tens of millions, if not more, area.
Awesome. Well, that is some great advice. And there's a couple two main takeaways that I want to kind of elaborate on a little bit. Is you mentioned the diversification of those different channels. And you mentioned that before, but you said one thing that's really key is you have something on your wall that you look at every day where you've got all of these things listed there: the text messaging, the email marketing, organic SEO, pay-per-click. I think we're at a point right now that there are so many channels out there that, like you said, you don't have to blast out all of these things at once. But like you said, pick a couple to focus on per month, and then, see what that does. Because we're at a point where there's so many these days. If you're not always, if they're not always in front of you, like right on your wall, you're going to forget about it. You're going to say, oh, wait a minute. I forgot. We never even tried the text messaging campaign. Maybe we tried it several months ago for a little bit, and we haven't gone back to it. We did get some decent sales from it, but we forgot and didn't go back. So they always have to be right in front of you. So that's really a key thing, because there's so many, and there's so much you got to do as a business owner, and all the business owners that are listening, that it's hard to juggle all this. So you got to have that always in front of you. So definitely key thing there I wanted to mention. And then also what you talked about as far as Neil Patel and what he did prior to his agency blowing up is he fully cemented himself as the guy when it comes to digital marketing. His face was across everything that they put out. Neil Patel, anytime you think about digital marketing, you think of Neil Patel, you think about SEO, he came up. So he focused a lot of attention on his personal branding. And then, all that was intentional prior to him, really creating his whole bona fide agency. And so That's one of the things that I think really helps. And you talked about people and influencers being able to connect with that. And, with your personal branding, when you do focus on it, it helps because it's easier for people to connect with a person as opposed to just, a plain brand that is, they don't know anything about. There's no personality, there's no human behind it. So very, very key there for sure.
Absolutely. And I think a big part of the question that people want to ask right now is, okay, well, where do I start if I want to not be a one-trick pony? And what I say is, first, you need to really profile your customer. I also hang these around every single wall in my office, and we give them a name, how old they are, how many dogs they have, so on and so forth. So we know what kind of communications our target customer persona want to receive, and we know where they're hanging out. So if you're asking the question, what do I do first? I would start by seeing who the customer is and really submersing yourself into what sort of life they live and where you're going to effectively reach them the most.
Yeah, very important, very key. That's that customer avatar persona creation. Yeah, it's really something that you have to do really. If it hasn't been done already in your business running, something you got to go do immediately. I mean, it's something that needs to be done right away so you can figure out where to reach that type of person, where do they hang out, how do you connect with them, what messaging is going to resonate with them. So very important. I'm glad you mentioned that. Well, Jared, it has been awesome talking to you. You've definitely imparted and dropped a bunch of different gems out here for our listeners and our viewers, and I appreciate that. So some great takeaways. And lastly, and I learned a lot myself, as I always do. Lastly, before we let you go, I always like to kind of switch gears here and just so our audience can get to know you a little bit better. If you don't mind sharing one closing fun fact about yourself that you think people may be interested to know about you.
Fun fact. You know what? This one is cool because it relates to business, and I'm not trying to be braggy, but I can hold my breath underwater for 4.5 minutes.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a long time. How did you develop that skill or that talent?
Well, the reason I bring it up is it shouldn't sound braggy because everyone can do this. I just didn't know. I only thought you can hold your breath for like 2 minutes and then you die. Right?
Yeah, basically. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have a passion for free diving and spearfishing, and I took a class. And there's different, once you learn how the body works and the mind works, by the end of the week, I was holding my breath for that long underwater. And it was like a crazy good life lesson and business lesson as well.
Okay. Good stuff, man. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. I'm trying to think how long I think I can hold my breath now. Yeah. I'm definitely at the couple minutes mark, I think. And then I have to tap out. But yeah, you're right. It's a matter of using the mind, the body. And we can all do things like that. It's just a matter of just kind of unlocking, the potential for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Jared, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Lastly, before we do let you go, if you don't mind letting our listeners and our viewers know how they can connect with you, if they want to pick your brain any more about, growing their own businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for watching and listening till the end. If you did, just Google BeefySites. I come right up. Very unique business name. That's why I went for it. It's my nickname. And, my website comes up, social. You can just reach out to me anyway. And a lot of people just hit me up with random questions. That's cool. Let's be in touch, and would love to just hear your feedback.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Jared. And that is a cool name. I don't think people will forget that. BeefySites, very unique. And so I definitely encourage our listeners and viewers to check you out, check out your website, and, see how you can help them out. And of course, thank you again for joining us today on the E-Commerce Marketing Podcast.
All right. Thanks so much, Arlen. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the E-Commerce Marketing Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know. Are you looking to take your digital marketing to the next level but are tired of weeding through countless YouTube videos with unproven and untrusted marketing strategies? Well, we have the answer for you. The More Sales Every Month online digital marketing course. In this information-packed course, you will learn effective keyword research, link building, content marketing, and much more to attract and convert your site visitors into paying customers. Just go to moresaleseverymonth.com and sign up today for a low one-time fee. In addition to this power-packed course, if you would like to get access to a growing repository of digital marketing articles, PDFs, and ebooks, check out getosi.com/resources and opt in to get full access to our library of priceless marketing information to help you take your digital marketing to the next level.